I'm going to start off with Bruce Arthur, a writer for the Toronto Star, as he reveals some of the behind the scenes things that were at play when Kawhi initially hit free agency after winning the championship in Toronto.
So during the playoffs, everyone knew that they were looking at the Clippers, right? Like, and I think I reported at the time, like Uncle Dennis Robertson was heard after games, you know, in the wash after the games where people are standing around the loading dock talking to each other. He was heard talking about targeting the Clippers as Kawhi's next during the playoffs. Like, I think it was during the Philly series. And so once they actually win the title, there was a real question as to whether he would come back. People now assume that it was a fait accompli, and it wasn't. At least the Raptors didn't think so. Up close, they were in constant communication with Kawhi. They knew what they were offering. They were offering a team that just won the title, and Kawhi's people knew and acknowledged that it was the best basketball situation. And by the way, OG Anunoby didn't even play in that playoffs. He was going to come back the next year. They had everyone coming back, and that was a really good team. But the Clippers obviously had been stalking Kawhi for a year. The Raptors knew that. And so things started to move, and Kawhi, the picture started to become clearer. And so at some point in the negotiations, they crossed a deal from Kawhi and Dennis. Oh, this is important. Remember, Bill Simmons at one point said, well, I wonder if Kawhi even knew about this. Kawhi sat in the meetings, listened to Dennis the whole time. Absolutely 100%. Unless he had headphones on, like noise-canceling headphones, he was part of those meetings. And so Dennis kind of starts going, well, we'd be interested to see if you could trade for Paul George. I believe the other name in there, because Kawhi was shopping around a little bit at the time. I think Bradley Beal was on that list, is what I reported at the time. He wanted Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy was going to Miami. And so Paul George really became the target. Bradley Beal, I think, was like a real backup. And the Raptors went, oh, I guess we could do that. So they made a call. And the ask at the time was, it wasn't even Masai to Sam Presti. It was lower level stuff. It was Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, 4 or 5 unprotected first round picks, and then you got to match the salary. And the Raptors went like, well, good luck. If you can get that, good luck. And that's interesting. They got that because the Clippers were so desperate. They make the Shea trade. They move all those picks. They move everything. So that was the number one demand, and probably the biggest one of everything. If the Clippers don't make the Paul George deal, I am of the belief to this day that Kawhi comes back. Maybe on a 1+1, maybe on a 1-year deal. And I, to this day, believe the Raptors win the title the next year with Kawhi. But they make the Paul George deal. But the other stuff that they brought up in the meeting was, what else can we get? So they kind of bring up a number, and the number is something like $10 million a year extra. And now the Raptors, Toronto's a very corporate city. There was a giant free agent in hockey in like 2016, Steven Stamkos, a local boy of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He was a free agent. He comes to Toronto. The president of Canadian Tire is in the meeting because because they can do that in the NHL. And they say, you will get all kinds of corporate endorsements in this town. No problem. And so this is the same thing. They go, well, yeah, of course we could. There's all kinds of corporations who would love to line up and talk to you. And this is where it goes sideways. Because Dennis says like, well, okay, but we don't want to do any work. And the Raptors kind of go.
Now keep in mind, with Uncle Dennis saying they don't want to do any work, this was the same sweetener that Pablo Torre revealed in the paperwork that according to the contract with Aspiration, Kawhi did not even have to do anything, and they even had options where he can tweet out something if he wanted to. So this situation sounds very familiar to what ended up playing out with Steve Ballmer in Aspiration.
Well, no, but like you don't have to do a lot of work. You just have to shoot some commercials, make some appearances. Maybe you put something on your Twitter feed, whatever it is. And they go, no, you don't think no, we don't want to do any work. And someone in the Raptors room at that point just goes, fuck. That's what this is. Because up until that point, they're asking for a lot, but you're within the bounds of kind of how the NBA works, right? I will come to you if you trade for this guy. And also, I'm interested in endorsements outside the team. This has been something that's been discussed ever since the story was broken by Pablo, right? Which is that a lot of teams line up their sponsors with their star players. Sure. It works for everyone. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the Raptors kind of go, well, we're out. Like, we can't do that. But the other thing that Dennis asks for, so he's still not done asking. I believe at one point he asked for a house or use of this or use of that, all this stuff. But he asks for a slice of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Well, two problems here. The Leafs are the biggest sports franchise in Canada, one of the biggest in the world. Like 4 out of every 10 Canadians live in Ontario. 95% of them that are hockey fans are Leafs fans. Like, this is a giant franchise. But also, they're owned by the same company. One company owns the Toronto Raptors and the Toronto Maple Leafs. But Dennis thought that it was, he knew he couldn't ask for the Raptors, but he thought he could ask for the Leafs.
My man, Uncle Dennis was trying to get that Knicks Pat Riley deal where he asked for percentages of ownership. But the Knicks are sort of a corporate franchise. They kind of ran with the MSG networks. It's kind of complicated right there already. They can't divvy out shares without a board approving that.
So,
like, it was 2 separate entities. Like, he thought,
he didn't think it would be a conflict of interest if he
it's a completely
owned a
different
share
sport.
of the company. It's a hockey
he did
team.
not Google. He did not punch it into the Googles before he sat down, right?
Wait, hold on. He didn't realize it was owned by the same company, which is, by the way, for the listeners at home, the name of the company is, Bruce?
Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment owns the Toronto Raptors.
My man, Uncle Dennis had a wish list. He was like, fuck it, I'm just going to start asking for anything.
That's how it works. But so at the Raptors side, I believe it was Larry Tannenbaum, who's a minority owner with the Raptors, had to explain, well, no, sorry, we can't do that because they're owned by the same company. So what do you have in terms of your asks? You got to trade for Paul George. Well, the Raptors wouldn't do that. The Clippers would. Then you ask for a certain amount of money above and beyond the salary cap, but we don't want to work for it. And we want stakes in outside companies that, again, we don't have to pay for. We don't have to work for. It's just extra money.
Now, before we get to the segment, all of this that was just stated is what played out in these aspiration contracts with Kawhi. He didn't have to do any work. He also owned percentages of aspiration. And eventually, when we go deeper into the paperwork, we'll see that he had an opt-out clause for his percentages of stock could actually be cashed out for no cheaper than a certain rate, even if the stocks fall below a certain value. Let's say the company was going to shit and the stocks were valued at $2 a share. He could sell it for no cheaper, let's just say for $20 a share. He had that type of clause in the contract.
And so the Raptors walk away from this and they go, listen, we did our best. There's no way to make this happen. There was no way Kawhi was going to stay under those conditions. And that's the end of the story. The morning he left, there was huge anger, though, in Raptors front office about how this had taken place. Like they were upset about this because this wasn't a free agent negotiation in the way that you're supposed to negotiate for free agents. But Kawhi walks, the pandemic interrupts the next year, the world spins outwards, and on we go, right? And so when Pablo reports this story, I'm looking at it, and I had heard pieces of this, but I couldn't prove any of it because you can't see into where's the money. You gotta have a window into the money, and that's what Pablo got here. There's a window into how exactly it worked. Now, what's interesting is the timeline on that. He doesn't have stuff that's 2019. He has stuff that happened starting in 2021.